and you replace it and it blows again, then you do have a non-repairable problem on the board, which is going to require replacement. Another mechanical factor is this one jumper, 4R9, which will interrupt the video circuit from the IF if this is missing or has become loose on its two posts. Your other 2 points are external items. The keyboard, which connects here at the 2K6 connector, is nothing more than a shorting completion keyboard. Scanning coming from the microprocessor out to the keyboard, back in from the keyboard into the microprocessor. And then you have your IR detector connector, which is located here, using the 12-volt standby to power it, and then you're looking for pulses coming in from the detector. So there are a couple external items to be concerned with. Other than that, it's an entire module replacement for maintenance on both chassis. In summarizing what we've covered so far, we went through the service adjustments, the customer adjustments, and finally the maintenance. You have greater detailed information in the accompanying training material. In Section 2, we will be covering the System 3 and Advanced System 3 product of the C3 chassis group.
Hello, my name is Ed Kroll. I'm a Senior Field Technical Training Specialist with Zenith Electronics. During this second portion of the program, I'm going to be talking to you about the C3 chassis. The C3 chassis was originally introduced in 1989 with the F model sets. We have since introduced the G line and now the J line, which continues on with the C3 chassis. The C3 chassis is used in the System 3 and in the Advanced System 3 sets. It's a dual module concept, as you can see here with this chassis in front of me. In other words, there are 2 modules. We have one module here, which is designated the main module, which contains the tuner, IF, video audio circuitry, all contained on this main module. And it's all outlined here, as you can see. The video output module is hardwired to the main module, so it is a part of the main module. On the other side, we have the switch mode power supply and vertical and horizontal sweep circuitry contained on the other module. So this is the C3 concept, and we're going to be talking to you more about servicing the C3. On the screen now, we have the customer menu for the F-line series of C3 chassis. The first menu we want to talk about is the source menu. Very similar to the C2 in the fact that we have the selection between antenna, cable, audio, video, or Y and C. Moving over to the right, we have the video menu, which of course has the picture, black level, color, tint, and sharpness. Moving down, the audio menu for stereo, bass, treble, and balance. Coming over to the left, the features menu, which features the sleep timer, and we have parental control. This is something that was not incorporated into the C2 chassis. The parental control allows the customer to lock out a channel which he does not desire some of the youngsters to be watching, so he can put parental control over a particular channel for a 12-hour period. We'll talk more about the parental control. Color Sentry video filter, and master reset. Moving over to the top, we have our setup menu with the auto search, favorite channel, time set, band selector, and AFC mode. So as you can see, these are pretty much explanatory menus as was mentioned in the C2 chassis. Now on the screen is the G-line customer menu. And it's very similar to the F-line. However, a few slight differences. In the features menu, if you notice, parental control has been eliminated. So no parental control in the G-line C3 chassis. Also, a few items familiar in the C2 line: light sentry for sensing room ambient light, the Sentry reset, which is the same as the master reset on the F-line customer menu, and the background for the menu background on and off has been added to the G-line. So these are the only changes between the F-line and the G-line customer menu. And the J-line continues very closely to the G-line customer menu. Only two significant changes. In the features menu, the background has been eliminated. No background adjustment for the features menu. Also in the audio menu, surround sound has been added to the advanced system 3 sets for adjusting the balance of the surround channel left and right. Access to the C3 factory menu is accomplished by pressing down on the front panel the menu button, volume down, and channel down. This is done only with the front panel controls and not with the hand control unit. On the screen, we have page 1 of the factory service menu for the F-line C3 chassis. Let's go through and look at these various adjustments. Starting at the top, we have horizontal position. This adjustment adjusts the horizontal position of the customer menu. So it moves the customer menu readouts from left to right. Right below that, we have the CS color. This is the Century color level. This will be used to set up the desired level the customer wants for chroma when he is in the color Century position. CS tint, which is the color Century tint, is the same. We will set this up for the proper tint for the customer's color Century adjustment. The most important factory adjustment is the environment, because the environment selects two different sources. It selects the type of jack pack that is being used on the set. If the set, or the receiver I should say, is a monophonic receiver, then you will be in the M1 position. Stereo sets without luminance chroma or RF switch will be the S2 position, and the deluxe sets, advanced system 3 sets with the deluxe jack pack will be set for S4. So environment is a very important setting. This is especially important when a main module is replaced, because if the environment is not in the correct position, then some of the features will be missing for the customer. The last item, Store Customer, is for saving the various settings for color level and tint that have been adjusted for the customer. And here we have page 2 of the service menu. Item number 1, brightness, limits the maximum brightness available for the customer. Item number 2, channel, selects the channel on which you want the set to be turned on. Item number 3, which is marked promo, was originally for a promotional, but nothing is to be adjusted in this position. Item number 4, volume on-off, mostly intended for hotel-motel sets for limiting the maximum volume. And item number 5, V-force mode, used with computers or video games to stabilize unstable sync. The G-Line factory menu, page 1, is on the screen now, and it is essentially the same. We're only going to mention the differences. Up in the factory menu, SP, which stands for stereo pilot. This is not an adjustment. It's only an indication whether a stereo pilot is being received. A reading of 10 or higher means stereo is being received. Lower readings indicate monophonic. The second item is just a software version for internal use. Page 2 of the service menu has only one change, and that's marked 60 cycle on-off. This is for selection of either 50 or 60 cycles for accurate keeping of the time with the time clock. Page 1 of the J-Line factory service menu has 2 items of note. Number 1, factory mode should be left in the off position at all times. This is for internal use only. Environment is marked N2, N4, P2, P4. N2 is none picture-in-picture sets, and P2, P4 is for picture-in-picture sets. The P2 is for System 3, the P4 is for Advanced System 3. Going down to service menu page 2, that stays essentially the same except for one item, which is marked AC power on. When this is in the on mode, the set after a power interruption will automatically come on. It is recommended for consumers that this be always kept in the off position. Next, we're going to show you the location of the service adjustments on the main module. The RF AGC control is located here. The composite video level control is located here. Right below it is the composite audio level control. The composite audio level control is not normally seen on most TV chassis. This control should not be adjusted in the field. This is basically a factory adjustment control. The last control is adjustment is L1213, which is the 4.5 megahertz audio adjustment located here. 2 items of mention on the video output module: the setup switch located here and connector 5C2 located here. Connector 5C2 can be jumpered out to ground with a 470 ohm resistor to look at the individual fields for purity setting. Pin 1 is red, pin 2 is green, and pin 3 is blue. On the sweep module, we have the 130 volt B+ adjustment. If it becomes necessary to make this adjustment, place the meter leads across resistor R3407. Then adjust R3418 for 130 volts. Follow the instructions in the service literature. Some additional controls: the vertical height control, R2112, the horizontal width control, R3249. On screen sizes larger than 20 inch, the control will be missing, and the coil, LX3201, will be adjustable. Down on the sweep transformer, we have the focus adjustment at the top and the master G2 adjustment at the bottom. Removal of the focus lead from the video board requires unsnapping the snap lock connector here and lifting the lead out. This is the new J-Line C3 chassis, And you will notice here that we have additional module. This is the picture-in-picture module, which is mounted here on top of the main module. Servicing of the C3 chassis requires gaining access to the boards for some important voltage checks. This is accomplished by sliding the chassis to the rear and then lifting up and sliding the chassis out. Now over here on the left-hand side, be very careful of the leads going over to the front panel. Pull the chassis out only far enough so that you can gain access and not damage those leads. In order to gain access to the modules for replacement, this guide rail here at the back must be removed. It's held in position with one 1/4 inch hex screw. Start out by removing that screw. Once that screw is removed, this guide rail can be removed by putting pressure down here on the left-hand side on the main chassis frame while lifting up on this guide rail. Then it will unsnap and remove from the main frame. In the majority of cases, the actual visual or audio symptoms will dictate which module is at fault. However, in conditions of no high voltage or dead set, checks will have to be made in order to determine which module is at fault. This particular troubleshooting chart has been put together to follow you through a step-by-step sequence in determining which module is at fault. The first check for troubleshooting for a no high voltage or dead set condition is to check the standby voltages on the power supply. Now, one important point right at this time: if you hear the degaussing relay click when the set is turned on, then you already know that the standby voltages in the power supply are good and the power supply is working properly. However, the very first check, if you do not hear the degaussing relay click, will be to check those standby power supply voltages and the 130 volts across resistor RX 3407. We're going to move our meter across resistor RX 3407. The ground lead is very important because there are a lot of non-isolating grounds in the C3 chassis. Do not use any of the heat sinks for the horizontal, vertical, or the power supply as your ground connection. Use only the jack pack ground on the main module or the shield on the tuner as your ground connection or your isolated ground. After you have the leads connected, turn the set on and measure the 130 volts across resistor RX 3407. Next, we're going to check the 16 volts DC at connector 3A6 pin 3 and also the 60 hertz sample at 3A6 pin 5. We're going to put the probe on pin 5 of 3A6 and look at the waveform on the oscilloscope. It should be approximately 5 volts peak to peak. For those field technicians out in the field, the portable meter can take a meter reading on the AC scale for the 60 hertz sample. This should be anywhere between 4 and 6 volts AC. After completing these checks, if one of the readings is missing, then we will replace the sweep power supply module. If all the checks are okay, we will go down the chart and continue on checking. Next, check for the on signal at connector 3A6 pin 6. We're going to put the meter probe at connector 3A6 pin 6 and turn the set on and look for a reading of approximately 3 volts DC. the on signal is missing, replace the main module. Otherwise, we're going to go down the chart and next check the 16 volts DC on the switch mode power supply. If this 16 volts is missing, replace the sweep module. If the 16 volts is okay, we're going to go move down and check the horizontal drive. We're going to check this at connector 3N2, pin 1. Connect the scope probe to connector 3N2, pin 1. Put the ground connection on pin 2 to avoid a lot of extraneous pickup. On the scope, we will see our drive waveform, which should be somewhere between 5 and 6 volts peak to peak. In the field, using a meter, the meter reading will be quite low. In the field, we want just to determine whether there is sweep drive. If there is no drive, replace the main module. If the drive is available, replace the sweep power supply module. One last point. At the beginning, we mentioned the degaussing relay, and that if you hear the degaussing relay click, you know that the standby voltages are all okay. In that case, as you go through these dead set, no high voltage checks, you can move down all the way down to checking the horizontal drive to speed up the troubleshooting process. Some J-line C3 chassis incorporate the picture-in-picture feature. The picture-in-picture module is mounted here. A defective picture-in-picture module can cause a variety of symptoms in the receiver, ranging from no video to a dead set. One great advantage in troubleshooting a set with the picture-in-picture module is that all of the cables can be disconnected from the picture-in-picture module, and the cable from 4D9 can be jumpered to 4C9 right here below the module to completely remove the picture-in-picture module electrically from the circuit. The picture-in-picture module incorporates 3 adjustments that may need to be adjusted in the home: the color level, the tint, and the contrast of the picture-in-picture insert picture. The module is removed from the chassis by removing 2 screws, one here on the left and the other on the right. We're going to remove those 2 screws and dismount the picture-in-picture module. Be sure the set is unplugged when you do this. The picture-in-picture module with the shield removed is now in position ready for adjustment. Only 3 adjustments available to the technician: the contrast, the color level, and the tint. The other adjustments inside the module are unserviceable. This concludes part 2 on the C3 chassis.
In this part, we're going to cover the Digital System 3 family of televisions. We will cover customer menus, factory menus, adjustments, and maintenance. We're going to cover some of the important aspects of interconnections on the digital set prior to discussing the customer menus. Normally, it's recommended that you connect the cable or the antenna input to the center lead on the 2795, which is labeled cable or antenna. Then it has a hardwired loop out right next to it, which you would use as your input to your VCR. The second connection would be the baseband or the audio-video outputs of the VCR are connected back to the auxiliary jacks on the television set. This is required in order to use the picture-in-picture feature which is built into most digital televisions. We're now looking at a different style of jack pack for the digital sets. You notice this left side is the RF. It has 3 inputs with 2 outputs for loop out to other devices. The audio-video section is a 3 input with 1 loop out. You would connect this in the same manner as we described on the simple jack pack. The cable or the antenna input to input number 1 or the cable connector, and then to the VCR you would connect the 2 VCR loop out, bringing your RF over to the VCR antenna input. Then hooking up your baseband audio video out of the VCR back to the jack pack auxiliary audio video input on the television. If they do have a decoder for the cable system, there is also a decoder loop output for that device. Another example of signal input is using a Super VHS video deck or a laser disc player. You hook it up in the same manner as we described before, the RF input to the cable connector, and if it is a VCR, you hook up the RF output to the antenna input, and then your baseband audio-video inputs to the auxiliary jack. On the Super VHS device or the Laserdisc player, you now have a YC output which contains the RGB video, which is connected to a S43 adapter. The output of the S43 adapter is a true RGB signal, which we hook back up to the RGB connector at the back center of the digital television set. You notice this connector has a diamond-shaped pattern on it. Out of the S43 are 2 connectors, the one with the diamond shape, which we do connect, and one with 2 parallel lines, which we do not connect. If this is connected, you may have chrominance lock problems with the television. Starting with the 1990-91 G-line digital models, on the auxiliary audio jack pack is included a surround sound output. This is an 8 ohm output which is connected to a pair of 16 ohm speakers in parallel. This is a very important point. In parallel, this is an 8 ohm load. This first style, you'll notice one speaker has a parallel set of connectors on it, one for the input and one to route to the second speaker. The second style of speaker you may see only has one set of terminals on each speaker. So you route from the jack on the television to the first jack with your input, and then you have to connect the second wire from the first speaker on the same terminals to the second speaker. Starting with the model year 1989-90, Zenith in the digital sets uses a colored menu. Each one appears to be a colored index card, and then the others are stacked behind it as if in a file. By pressing the menu key, the next one in line will come to the front. The one in front is the only one that you may adjust controls from. The structure of the digital menu is similar to the ones we've seen already. You have the setup menu, the features menu, audio menu, and video menu. The difference being that on the ones using words to prompt you into action, the words are to the right side of the menu. You'll notice the audio and the video use bar graphs with an indicator at the top. The digital service menu is accessed via the remote control, and this is in detail in your manual which is accompanying this video. The basic items on the digital service menu are your color sub-adjustment for the color oscillator, and then your full range of normal video geometry controls. The numeric indication down the center is the setting. It's the same as the physical position of a pot. The number alongside is the index number of each adjustments. The colors, the dark red, green, blue, light red, green, blue, are for the black and white tracking, the dark and the shadowed or high contrast areas, and the light for the light areas. We're now looking at page 2 of the service menu. This started with the G and the J line, that there are 2 pieces to the digital menu. Back porch, color filter, PIP, environment, and so on, again, are in the same format. An indication of the number stored for each setting as if you were turning a pot. Important items on this particular page of the menu is the environment, which you notice is indirect. This also has a setting for front, rear, and monitor for projection settings. The other important item is the audio mode, which is Bose or no Bose, which does affect things on the customer menu if set up improperly. The 3 indications at the bottom are just indicators for the stereo decoder. The only physical adjustments you make on the digital set is the G2 and focus in the same manner as we described on the C2 and 3, and then the audio and video and AGC delay pots located on the IF module. The video at the upper corner, AGC delay under the cover at the center, and the audio control at the bottom. And this concludes the presentation on the digital set. In your manual is detailed information on the troubleshooting procedure and various test points and checkpoints in great detail. You would troubleshoot it the same way we did in the C2 and C3, starting with power, standby power, switch power, sweep signals, and then your video and audio tracing.